Hello guys, Cyprien from FEFO, and today I'll show you something very exciting. We'll talk about how to create web apps for engineers in a very simple way. So there's this website called Trame. So it's some kind of framework that is developed by Kitware. So Kitware is the company that is developing a lot of open source software that you probably know about, like Paraview. They are also behind the VTK framework and a lot of tools which are really used a lot, like CMake and a lot of other stuff. So you can have a look at their company if you want. But today we're talking about a new web framework that they are developing, and I wasn't aware about it until I discovered that this exists. So this will allow you to create web apps with 3D visualization inside the browser in a pretty simple way. But of course, we'll see how simple it really is, because before they had something else which was based on JavaScript. I think it was called Paraview Web or something, and it was pretty hard to use, to be honest. So I had tried previously what they had, and I hadn't been very convinced. But I will try with you today this Trame. So we'll see together how this works and if I am able to actually do what they say you can do. So I've never really used it, so this is really a first kind of tutorial, and we'll see how it works simply together. So before I start to have a look at what Trame can actually do, two things to say. First, I'm on Windows, but this tutorial should work also if you're on Ubuntu or on Mac OS. I think this is compatible with 3 operation systems. So I decided to try on Windows because I know a lot of you are still using Windows, and we'll see if it works. Second thing is that if you don't know what a web app is, well, basically it's an application like anything you run on your computer, but it runs inside the browser. So it's something you can put on the web somewhere on a server and access it through your web browser. So, a web app for scientific visualization is some kind of app which is interactive and will allow you to visualize your 3D data inside a browser application. So it's pretty useful if you want to build something that interacts with some kind of data that you have. It can come from simulation, for example, or anywhere else, basically. Okay, now that I have said that, let's have a look together at documentation, and I think this is where you are supposed to start. So let's see a bit what Trame is. So it's an open source platform for creating interactive and powerful visual analytics applications. It's based on Python, and it's leveraging VTK, Paraview, and Vega. So I don't know what Vega is, but I know very well VTK and Paraview. And this will allow you to create web-based application in minutes. Okay, so we'll see that if I can get that in a minute or not. Yeah, so it's using Python. So Python is a pretty easy to understand development language. If you're not familiar with development, Python is really where you should start because it's really easy to use. And yeah, and what you can do with that, with why you should be using Trame. So of course it has some kind of built-in VTK and Paraview functions, and as you know, VTK and Paraview are right now very, very powerful to post-process simulation data, medical data, all kind of stuff. It has everything inside it. So it's not like if you use a traditional JavaScript framework, for example, you'll have to build all of that by yourself from the ground up. But with those VTK features and all of that built in, it should be much easier to get what you want. So I think this is the advantage. So for scientists, engineers, this seems like a good way to get application to do what you want. Okay, so getting started. So where should I start? Best way to get familiar with Trame is following the tutorial or use the cookie cutter template to build a new application. Okay, so let's start with the tutorial. Okay, so let's see. So the easiest to work through a tutorial within the Trame tutorial repository. So it seems like they have a repository which has everything I need, which is pretty cool. So first step, download, set up VTK, layouts, HTML application, Paraview. A lot of stuff to do. There's some to be video, which talks about Trame V1. And let's click on next. And it seems that this is where the actual tutorial starts. So I'm going to start by cloning those the tutorials inside a folder. So let's go and let's put a new folder on my desktop. So I know it's not a good practice to put anything on your desktop, but that's for the practicity. So let's call that Trame Apps. Let's open a terminal within this folder, and let's just git clone this. So you need to have Git installed on your computer. If you don't have Git, well, just install it. On Windows, it's pretty simple to install. You go on the Git website and you just download the installer and you install it. Okay, I have it, so I just click and everything is downloaded, and you see that I have this folder that just appeared here. So what I did is that I cloned all the material that I will be needing for this tutorial. So I guess there are several. First is setup, then you have VTK, then you have layouts. Well, looks like I have everything into this folder, so that's pretty cool. Now, how do I launch this? So let's go back to my tutorial, and remain tutorial steps assume that current directory is the Trame tutorial roots directory. Okay, so don't miss that. That means that I have to cd into my Trame tutorials folder. I sometimes use, I think, some Linux command within the terminal. If that doesn't work for you, it's because I've installed, I think, msys2, so it automatically allows me to enter some of the Linux command into the Windows terminal. And I guess you have equivalent Windows command. But anyway, I will be using like command like cd or stuff like this, or ls. Not sure it works on all Windows machine, but if it doesn't on your machine, you might have to use the equivalent Windows command. I'm pretty familiar with those commands, so that's why I'm using this. Anyway, okay, so I cd into the Trame tutorial folder. Now let's go to the next step. And now I have to set up the VTK environment. So I need basically to install this Trame framework. And let's see what it tells me here. Requires Python 3.6 plus, but since Paraview 5.11 is bundling Python 3.9, we will use Python 3.9 in this tutorial. So what you should understand from here is that it's more or less required to use Python 3.9 and not another Python version, because all that has been tested on Python 3.9. So you could be using Python 3.6 or 7 or 8, but I guess, you know, if you want to use and follow everything, you should better have Python 3.9. Now, for those who use Python 3.10, it will probably not work because this VTK is not available for 3.10, I think. So make sure you have the right Python version installed. So let's have a check if I have this. So on Windows, there's a command called py, so it's a py launcher, and then you use 3.9 to see if I can launch this version. And if you have the Python prompt that appears like that, it means you have 3.9 installed. So mine is 3.9.1, which is a pretty old version from 2020. I guess it should work. Maybe it's better to use a more recent 3.9 version. But anyway, I'm going to use this one. If you don't have 3.9 installed, then go on the Python website and just install Python 3.9. So should be pretty easy, but who knows. Okay, so I have that. Now let's create a virtual environment. So I'm going to use this command here. So py. So because I'm on Windows and I think those commands he's giving here for Linux or Mac, so you might have something slightly different. So I'm using a py launcher 3.9-m venv, and I'm gonna call that so -.venv. So that's will be the name of my virtual environment. Enter. Let's see if that works. Seems that it worked. And if I go in my Trame tutorials, you see that I have this folder .-venv that has been automatically created. So that's the virtual environment that will contain all my Python modules and everything I will be installing. So for those who don't know what a virtual environment for Python is, let me explain quickly. Basically, I could install all of that with the current Python I have installed, just like this. But those new modules for Python, like Trame and VTK, they might conflict with some of the modules I have already installed, I know, for my previous applications. So let's suppose that VTK here is not compatible with a NumPy version that I had installed before. It would not work, basically. So that's why you create a virtual environment, which is some kind of clean slate in which you can start from zero without anything installed. And to use this virtual environment, what you have to do is you have to venv dash. So you have to activate it. Sorry, I was not finding the word. venv. I call it -venv. That's why. .venv scripts and activate. Again, that's the command for Windows. The command here, source, is for Mac and Linux. So click on enter, and now you see that I have this in green appearing here. That means that I am now within the virtual environment, and I'm ready to follow the other steps. So once you are within the virtual environment, if you just type Python, it will automatically launch the Python version that you have used to create the virtual environment. So that's why I can use now just the Python command, and I don't have to use py-3.9. Okay, so now let's do this first. So this is to upgrade pip. So if you don't know what pip is, it's the module for Python that allows you to install all the Python modules. So you have to upgrade it to make sure you have the latest pip. So okay, so installed it, it's successful. And this will allow me to find the latest versions of the modules. So, and now I need to install Trame. So let's copy that, paste that, enter. And now I'm installing this Trame framework within my virtual environment. So if I leave my virtual environment, Trame will not be installed. So that's the advantage of having a virtual environment. You can enter into it, or you can go out of it. and that way you have some kind of special environment in which you can do all the testing that you need. So it seems to be installed, which is a good news. And now let's install this pip install VTK. So that's where if you don't have if you have Python 3.10 on another variant, that might not work. So if you have an error message here, go back, just delete the virtual environment folder that you have created, and install Python 3.9 and just start again and do the same that I'm doing. Okay, let's wait, and okay, it worked, so it's installed. That's pretty nice. And now that this is done, let's try running the application. So now I should be able to go and run this. So this is in this folder 00 setup. I have a app.py file. Let's open that with a text editor. And this is a pretty simple app. So as you can see, this is the only framework you need to get this Trame app working. So from Trame app import get server. So you get a server, you assign it to the server variable. Then the GUI is created with this. So GUI will be very simple, it's just text hello Trame, and then this is the main function. So it's very simple app. Now let's try to launch that. So they tell me the command is like this. So let's copy that. Let's go back to my here and make sure you are in the right folder. And yeah, it seems to be launching. So now I launched that on the port 1234, and this is all I get. So it looks like it's just a blank page, right? So it's not very exciting. And it says hello Trame here. But this is a web app, technically. So I hope I will have something a bit more elaborate to show you, because this is a bit sad to just see a blank page, but at least it's working, so it's a good news. And here you have a bit of description of what this is actually doing. So in this tutorial, the command is python app.py. So the way to launch your app is you put your app into this file, app.py. Then you launch that using the Python command, and you give it some variable port, which will specify the port on which your app will be launched. And if you can specify the host. So by default, it seems to be the local host, because I'm not online, right? I'm not on a server, I'm on my local PC. So it's generating automatically some machine that will, some kind of server that will run my app. So it's pretty cool. Now this app is importing two modules, Trame app get server and Vuetify, which is used to import the single page layout. And we see that layout, the only thing that is done in this app is to change the title of the app with Hello Trame. And finally, we launch the app, and this is what I've shown you. Now let's go for something a bit more complicated. So I hope I will start to see some 3D data, right? So the second app will be this app cone.py. So let's go and open this. Where is it? Is it in the 01 VTK? You have this, and let me open that with Sublime Text. Okay, you can use any text editor. If you have Notepad++ or something, that should work. Okay, and now they're telling me I should add some stuff within this layout. Now this is exactly the same as my previous, right? So I'll close this one, but I will need to add something into it. So first what we need to add is an import VTK and Beautify from Trame widgets. So let's copy that, and we need to add that here. Okay, save my file. Then we will need to import the required objects from VTK. We will visualize a simple cone in this example, so we need VTK cone source. So I'm going to import this. So it's kind of pre-built model which is provided by VTK, which is a cone source. Other VTK objects will need to be imported based on the desired visualization pipelines. Next, we need to import the VTK rendering core. So it seems like there's a bunch of stuff to import here. Okay. And finally, we need to import the required modules for the interactor and rendering. So VTK interactor style switch is required for the interactor initialization. So it seems like this will be what we will use to use the mouse to rotate the code in that browser. So this VTK interactor style switch. And the VTK rendering OpenGL2 module is required for the rendering initialization. It is not necessary for local rendering, but you'll want to include it so that you can seamlessly switch between local and remote. It seems like they are providing two ways of rendering. You can either render on your local machine, or you can render it from a remote server. So when you will put this app on a remote server, you will need this. So you put this. As promised, to add visualization to your Trame application, you simply write VTK pipelines in Python. So everything you see here is some kind of a simple, well, what we will be written here is a simple VTK pipeline, but written in Python, because VTK is in C++, so it's a bit difficult to use if you're not familiar with C++. So there are a number of ways to learn VTK. Okay, so they're telling you that they will not teach you VTK here. They're just giving you a lot of resources to teach. But anyway, just pay the code and it should work, I hope. But this tutorial does not provide adequate background. Yeah, okay. So first we create VTK renderer, and we tie together to add the renderer to the rendering window. So let's take this code. The thing is, where should I put this? So I think they probably have the full code somewhere. So okay, I'm not sure. I will try to see what I get. So I suppose I have to put it here. So render, VTK render, etc. So I'm creating the render window. Second, we need to create the render window interactor. So this is just a bunch of code to paste. I hope this will work. We'll see. It already seems a bit more complicated than what they told me. So it's true that the 1 minute was just a blank page, but this one seems to be okay. So third, we create the desired visualization. This process requires a creation of object, a mapper, and an actor. So we have a bunch of new objects. So we have the cone, which is basically taken in the VTK cone source. We have a mapper, which is basically, I guess, mapping this cone source to something called a mapper, and then the mapper is given to an actor, and the actor, I guess, is what we use to act with. So the instantiated VTK cone source is our mesh source that will produce VTK poly data. Then we want to map it to a graphical representation by creating VTK polydata mapper. We must create a connection from the cone to the mapper by setting the input connection. We then create an actor and we connect the mapper to the actor. Okay. Finally, we add the pipelines actor to the renderer. reset the camera and render. Okay, so we have created an actor, and the actor should be linked to the renderer that we have here. So we have a render window, we have an interactor, we have a cone, we have a mapper, we have an actor, and the actor is then given to the renderer, and the renderer is what we will use to render. So it seems complicated, but this is all VTK type of, so if you're familiar with the VTK syntax and the way to work with VTK, well, there are very good tutorials online about this, so maybe I'll make one soon. Well, you will understand how this works. Now let's have a look at how to actually launch that. Local and remote rendering. So there are two kinds of rendering. Okay, local rendering advantage. The server doesn't need a graphics processor unit, GPU. Okay, so basically local rendering is using your own computer GPU. Disadvantage is that the data to be rendered must be transferred from the server to the client. This transfer may be too slow and the data may be too large for the browser to manage. Okay, so if you use local rendering, every time you render, the data will be downloaded from the server to your browser to be visualized. So it can be pretty slow. Now you have another way called remote rendering, and the data to be rendered doesn't move, so it stays on the server, and it can use parallel and distributed processing to handle extremely large data. Disadvantage is that there may be a latency in the image that you are showing on the screen. Servers have to be more capable, so you need to get a better server which has GPUs and that can actually render your model on the server. So those are two ways, and it's up to you based on your application. You can, if you are just testing, I guess the local rendering is okay, but if you have a real serious project, and remote rendering is much better, I guess. Now implementation, so how do we choose if we want local or remote? So we need, down in the GUI section of the application, we first need to select the rendering method. So this is used for local rendering and this is used for remote rendering. So, and define a container to hold renderer. So if I look at my app here, there is a GUI section, so that's this one, and you see you have with single page layout. So it looks like you have to put it into this. You have to define a container, so you have to write it like this, basically. So I'm just gonna copy this code here, and instead of this hello Trame, I'm gonna paste that. And well, I don't need these comments, so I will remove this. So make sure the indentation is correct, because that's the key to good Python application working. If you have some space here which is not, or some wrongly indented code, that will not work. So make sure you have right indentation. Okay, and now it's use local or remote, so I can comment out. Let's start with local maybe. So we'll comment this one, and missing update when ready to do. Okay, so let's save that. We add a Vuetify component to web application, in this case a V container, and okay, so the arguments include fluid to get full white container, and classes for CSS styling. So it seems to this is where you control the graphics. Well, it's pretty simple here. You have only one class and some kind of true fluid, which I guess will help with the resizing of the window. Okay, when you have something more complex, I get you will need to add some stuff into here. Now, once the client and server are ready, we need to update the view by calling HTML view update. So I need to put this code here, new line, new line. Okay, so there's a new line here to create the controller. So this is width as layout. Okay, so this is before this line here. And this new line here is coming after this. Okay. And now we should be able to run the application. So it's show time. I hope this would work, but it's rarely work from the first time. So if it doesn't work, please excuse me in advance. Let's just try to run this. Oh wow, it works. Awesome. So indeed, once you know the code to paste, you have your application. So right now, the only thing it does is that to show this code, and you think I can already interact with it. I'm able to rotate this code, make it bigger, change the angle, etc. You have some embedded light into it. So that's pretty cool. And yeah, so I guess there's much more stuff to learn now. That will be probably for a second video. So I think that's already a lot for our first video. So I hope this was pretty interesting for you and that you learned a lot of stuff from this. If you like this and you think I should make this new video to continue to work on the Trame framework and show you how it works for the other tutorials, and so we can go together to create this kind of apps, please leave comments on this video. Let me know, because maybe this is a bit more advanced. I don't know. But actually I find this is pretty cool, and this seems to be much simpler than what Kitware made before with this JavaScript frameworks. This one seems to be easier to work with, and I'm pretty excited to try to make web apps with that. So again, thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next tutorial. Bye.